man, this movie, it's just too much.
Yeah, the writers are on the set. These are twisted minds to come up with stuff like what we just saw. Do you fear
Yeah, what's
them?
their deal?
Yeah.
There's more killing in this movie than I think any movie I've ever seen.
For a movie to be banned, it has to be really shocking in some way. But banning a movie just makes us more curious. What could be so extreme that it has to be hidden from human eyes? Today, we'll rank movies banned for being too disturbing, starting from the least to the most disturbing. I'm Visual Venture, and you are awesome. The Last Temptation of Christ. The Last Temptation of Christ caused chaos when it came out. First, theaters refused to show it. Then, video stores wouldn't rent it out. Finally, when a few brave movie theaters decided to screen the movie, they were attacked by angry mobs. The backlash was intense, but people weren't surprised, because this movie was doomed as soon as the project started. And the first red flag was the man directing the movie, Martin Scorsese. In the 1980s, Martin Scorsese was already a Hollywood legend. He directed hit movies that made a lot of money at the box office. Despite all the success, Scorsese felt like something was missing in his career.
Well, over the years, I was always interested in making a film on Jesus, either from the character of Jesus, either seen through the Gospels or through other eyes, in a sense.
But Scorsese didn't have a resume for a religious film. His previous movies were mostly about violence and crime. One of his movies, Taxi Driver, was so disturbing that it inspired someone to become an assassin. Scorsese was the last person anyone expected to direct a religious film, but against all odds, he did it. In 1988, he released The Last Temptation of Christ. But when the film premiered, audiences were shocked by what they saw on screen. The movie opens with a disclaimer. This film is not based on the Gospels, but upon the fictional exploration of the eternal spiritual conflict. But that warning wasn't nearly enough to prepare people for what they were about to see. At first, the movie follows the normal Bible story. Jesus is baptized, starts preaching, gathers disciples, and performs miracles.
They'll have the real value, the value of love, to love, share, and comfort. They'll have the courage to do the good.
Jesus knows that it's his destiny to die on the cross. Then the story takes a bizarre twist. Someone suggests to Jesus that he doesn't have to sacrifice himself on the cross. Instead, he could have a normal life, marry, have kids, and live happily ever after.
I admit it. I'd like it, but I'll never have it.
Listen, if you really want God, don't spend your time in the desert. He's not there. He's right here. Read your scriptures. God doesn't want you to fast and pray. He wants you to make children.
At first, Jesus resists the idea, but as time goes on, the temptation becomes harder to ignore.
When I see a woman, I blush and look away. I want her, but I don't take her for God.
Eventually, the devil tricks Jesus into abandoning his divine mission. In this alternate version of the story, Jesus steps down from the cross and starts a new life. He marries Mary Magdalene and they're happy together. There's even a scene of them consummating their marriage. Years later, as an old man, Jesus regrets giving up the cross. He kneels down and prays, begging God for a second chance to become the Messiah.
I didn't fight hard enough. Give me your hand. I want to pay the price.
In a dramatic twist, the movie ends with Jesus back on the cross, completing his sacrifice for humanity. Scorsese and his team spent $7 million on the film, going all out to make it a success. But when it finally premiered in August 1988, viewers couldn't stand it. Christian groups called the film disrespectful and blasphemous. What really set them off was the scene of Jesus getting intimate with his wife. But the backlash didn't stop the studio from promoting the film. So some angry people took matters into their own hands. 2 months after the film was released, a Christian group set a movie theater on fire for showing the film. Around that same time, the director Martin Scorsese started getting death threats. It got so bad that he hired bodyguards to keep him safe for years. Religious groups staged protests that went on for weeks. Their efforts paid off. Many theater chains refused to screen the movie. Additionally, many religious countries, including Greece, Argentina, and Mexico, banned the film. 30 years have passed since the movie came out, but to this day, The Last Temptation of Christ remains one of the most controversial banned movies ever made. This next film had a lot of famous actors, but the ideas in the movie were dangerous for society. Natural born killers. Natural Born Killers wasn't banned because people hated it. It was banned because they liked it too much. Some people even wanted to act like the characters in the movie. But if you know anything about the film, you'll understand why anyone imitating it was a recipe for disaster. Natural Born Killers is a romantic crime action film from 1994. The movie follows the story of Mickey Knox and his girlfriend Mallory. Both of them come from deeply troubled families. But when they meet, it's love at first sight.
Who are you?
Mickey, who are you?
I'm Mallory.
It seems like a typical love story. Mickey and Mallory even make plans to run away together. That's when the movie goes from romantic to disturbing. Mallory doesn't like her parents because of how they treat her. Before she and Mickey hit the road, they end Mallory's parents' lives as an act of revenge. After the crime, the couple has an unofficial marriage ceremony on a bridge.
You marry me?
Of course I'll marry you. I've been waiting for you to say that for so long.
As husband and wife, they journey across the country, but it's going to be a horrifying journey. As Mickey and Mallory move from place to place, they leave a trail of bodies behind. In one scene, they eliminate everyone in a diner just for fun. Soon, they realize they've claimed 52 victims in New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. The police launch a manhunt to catch them. Mickey and Mallory's faces are everywhere on TV and in newspapers. The police expect the public to help them track down the fugitives, but the opposite happens. Instead of seeing Mickey and Mallory as villains, the media turns them into idols. TV reporters romanticize their crimes. One journalist named Wayne Gale takes it even further. On a show, Wayne portrays the couple as rebels fighting against a broken system.
To tell the tale of Mickey and Mallory.
Thanks to the media, Mickey and Mallory become full-blown celebrities. However, they don't get to enjoy their newfound fame. After a violent shootout with the police, the couple is arrested and sent to prison. But even behind bars, their fame doesn't fade. Reporters are desperate to interview them. After spending a year in jail, Mickey and Mallory somehow manage to break out. After all their crimes, the film ends with Mickey and Mallory walking away without any consequences.
Come on, miss. Come on, let's go.
Okay, baby.
Natural Born Killers premiered in August 1994, and it was an instant hit. During its open weekend, it went straight to #1 at the US box office. It made $110 million on a $34 million budget, which was a huge profit. However, the film's popularity soon became a curse. Copycat crimes in real life started happening across the country. The criminals behind these attacks said the film inspired them. One even dressed like Mickey Knox during his crime. Another group of real criminals codenamed their attack NBK, which stands for Natural Born Killers. People started accusing the movie of sending the wrong message, that breaking the law was somehow cool. The ending, where fugitives walk away free, was the worst part. But according to the director, that was the exact opposite of what he was trying to portray. The film was meant to criticize how the mass media sensationalizes crimes just to boost ratings and get more views. It was supposed to inspire change, not violence. However, because people lost their lives in these real-life copycat crimes, the film developed a dark reputation. Eventually, because of the film's violent content and negative message, it was banned in Ireland and the Philippines. And maybe banning it was for the best. This next movie doesn't have any violence or disgusting scenes, but it was still banned in multiple countries. The question is, why? The Gods Must Be Crazy. The Gods Must Be Crazy was supposed to be a comedy, but instead of making people laugh, it made them mad. But unlike other banned films, it wasn't the visuals that shocked people, it was the story itself. The Gods Must Be Crazy is a South African film from 1980. The story begins when a pilot flying over the Kalahari Desert throws a Coke bottle out of his plane. The bottle falls through the sky and lands in the desert perfectly intact. An African tribe called the San people finds the bottle, and since they've never seen a bottle before, they think it's a magical object.
When something falls from the sky, it can only have come from the gods.
The tribe puts the bottle to use in all kinds of ways. They use it as a musical instrument, a fire starter, and even a cooking utensil. But what starts as a blessing quickly turns into a curse. Since there's only one bottle to share, it leads to fights and jealousy among the tribe members. He, one of the tribesmen, decides the bottle is causing too much trouble. He takes it and sets off on a journey to return it to the gods.
The unusual story of Key, the bushman, as he travels to the edge of the earth to return the god's mistake.
Along the way, Key meets new people, gets into strange situations, and has many adventures. The film ran for 109 minutes and cost $5 million to produce. When it was released in September 1980, it didn't disappoint. The Gods Must Be Crazy slowly became a worldwide hit. It was the most financially successful South African film ever produced at the time. It earned about $200 million worldwide and was translated into multiple languages.
The Gods Must Be Crazy. An epic comedy of absurd proportions.
But not everyone found it entertaining. While it was being praised in some places, it was being condemned in others. People were angry about how the movie portrayed the African tribe that found the bottle. Critics said it made Black Africans look like primitive simpletons or incompetent buffoons. People living in African and Afro-Caribbean countries were the most upset. They felt the movie was making fun of them. Others tried to calm the situation, saying people were reading too much into a comedy meant to entertain. But that didn't reduce the backlash. The movie was banned in several African and Afro-Caribbean countries. To this day, people continue to debate whether The Gods Must Be Crazy is a harmless comedy or an offensive movie. When you think of witchcraft, Harry Potter probably comes to mind. But there's another witchcraft movie so creepy, many people couldn't sit through it. Hexen, Witchcraft Through the Ages. When Hexen was made in 1922, it was the most expensive film ever produced in Scandinavia. It also took 3 whole years to film, but after all that effort, it was banned for being too disturbing. And that's because this film was about a topic that many people were scared of. Hexen is a horror film that explores the history of witchcraft. The film is split into several parts, each dividing into a different aspect of the subject. It was directed by Benjamin Christensen. To prepare for the film, Christensen read an ancient book about how to identify, hunt, and capture witches. During filming, he went to extreme lengths to make everything feel real.
To evoke the right mood, Christensen shot most of the film at night, also highly unusual for 1922.
The director even acted in the film himself, playing the role of the devil taunting priests and nuns. But the most disturbing part of the movie comes in part 3, where it shows how witches were persecuted in the Middle Ages. It begins when a man named Jesper passes away lying in bed. His death seems natural, but Jesper's family believes he was murdered. The family accuses a poor old woman named Maria of taking Jesper's life. But Maria never even touched Jesper, so how could she have possibly harmed him? The family had an answer. Maria was a witch. Maria is old, wrinkled, and homeless. She looked exactly like what people thought a witch should look like, and that's all it took for them to accuse her. Back then, they believed witches could harm others using spells and curses. Jesper's family is so sure Maria is responsible that they report her to the judges. Maria is arrested and interrogated. At first, Maria insists she's innocent. She says, "How do you expect me to confess that which is not true?" But the judges pressure Maria until she finally cracks. Maria gives a false confession, saying she's done horrible things. She said she gave birth to the devil's children, attended demonic feasts, and used magical ointments. But then Maria gets a bit carried away with her confession. She begins to accuse other women in the village of being witches too. The judges take notes as Maria names other supposed witches. Soon they have a long list. The women Maria accused are arrested and pressured to confess. Once they confess, they too are forced to name other witches in the village. It became a vicious cycle where, as the story says, every witch gives 10 other witches away. By the end, multiple women are found guilty and sentenced to be burned at the stake. The punishment is brutal and hard to watch. When Hexen was released in September 1922, it was very different from the other movies of that era. It showed people without clothes, black magic rituals, and a realistic devil with horns. The list goes on. There were torture chambers, possessed nuns, and even sacrifices. Hexen wasn't just a movie, it was a nightmare on screen. Because of the disturbing visuals, the film got a lot of backlash. Remember, this was way back in 1922. One movie critic said Hexen was absolutely unfit for public exhibition. In the United States, it was banned outright. Even in Sweden, where it was made, theaters were scared to play it. The filmmakers had to cut out some of the scariest parts just to get it shown. But even after the cuts, people still thought the film was just too much to handle. Over time though, Hexen became a classic. The makeup sets, costumes, and special effects were ahead of their time. Today, Hexen is even listed as one of the 1001 movies you must see before you die. And if you're not too scared, you should check it out. This next movie involves cruelty, gore, and death traps. Pretty gruesome. Saw 6. The Saw franchise became famous for its gruesome, violent horror. The fans loved it and they kept coming back for more. The first 5 Saw movies made over $400 million at the box office, turning a massive profit. So when it was time to make Saw 6, the producers decided to take things to the next level. But some people think they went a little too far.
Saw 6.
To really understand Saw 6, you need to know what the series is about. The Saw franchise centers around a vigilante known as Jigsaw. Jigsaw has a twisted concept of justice. He believes that bad people need to be punished, but not necessarily by going to jail. They need to face life or death situations designed to teach them moral lessons. In Jigsaw's mind, if they survive these challenges, they'll become better people. So Jigsaw kidnaps these so-called bad people and forces them to play horrifying games where survival is not guaranteed. Saw 6 begins with 2 loan sharks who've been captured by Jigsaw. He throws them into a deadly game with one rule: only one of them can leave alive. What follows is a brutal contest for survival. In the end, only one makes it out. That set the tone for the rest of the movie. Jigsaw's next target is a health insurance executive named William. The reason why William is there is because he denies insurance coverage to people who desperately need medical care. This didn't age well.
But my requests for coverage have all been turned down.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that if I came and explained it to you that you might be able to get that overturned for me.
Jigsaw captures William and takes him to an abandoned zoo. A videotape informs William that he must complete a series of tests to survive. The challenges in this movie aren't random. Every one of them is designed to punish William for his decisions and force him to confront the lives he's ruined. As the movie goes on, the tests become more brutal and the stakes get higher. The producers poured $11 million into making the movie as scary as possible. In October 2009, Saw 6 was finally released. That's when the trouble began. Saw 6 was so graphic and intense that many countries had an issue with it. Even in America, where horror films often push boundaries, the Motion Picture Association demanded that the gruesome opening scene should be toned down before the movie could be approved for release. In Spain, things were even more problematic. Spanish film authorities gave the film an X rating for extreme violence. This meant the film could not be shown in any theater in Spain. The producers were forced to cut some of the most graphic scenes. Only then did Spain lower the rating to an 18. This meant it could be shown in theaters, but only for adult audiences. However, other countries weren't willing to compromise. In Thailand and Malaysia, Saw 6 was flat out banned. Trinidad and Tobago also banned the film. Despite all the controversy, Saw 6 still managed to earn $69.8 million worldwide. Although that sounds impressive, it was the lowest grossing film in the Saw franchise at the time. Many people think the movie was just so unwatchable that it hurt its box office performance. As one review said, Saw 6 is the 6th Saw I've seen and maybe the sickest. This next film is so twisted that watching it feels like a punishment. The Human Centipede 2 full sequence. Before any movie can be released in the UK, it has to be approved by the National Film Board. It's a standard process, but when the Human Centipede full sequence was submitted for approval, the authorities didn't just reject it. They said it was just too horrible to show. Usually, a rejected movie can cut out the bad scenes and reapply for approval, but not this time. The board said that no amount of cuts would allow them to give this film a certificate. So what was in this movie that caused such an extreme reaction? The Human Centipede full sequence is about a man named Martin Lomax. Martin is a security guard who works in an underground parking garage. But Martin has a secret obsession. He wants to create something called a human centipede. It's a twisted concept where multiple people are stitched together to form one long, crawling creature like a centipede. He got the idea from a movie he watched. Martin is so fixated on this idea that he even tells his mom about it. Obviously, she thinks he's out of his mind.
He keeps on talking about a centipede.
with 12 people.
But Martin doesn't care what anyone thinks. Even though he has no medical training, he starts gathering tools like duct tape and a staple gun to bring his twisted vision to life. He also finds an abandoned warehouse, which is the perfect spot for his plan. Then Martin begins kidnapping people one by one and taking them to the warehouse. Once he has 12 people, Martin begins his experiment. He uses a staple gun and duct tape to attach them together, and I'll let you fill in the rest. And yes, the movie shows every moment of this process. Once his creation is complete, Martin forces the centipede to crawl, deriving pleasure from his twisted work. But his experiment doesn't go as planned. The centipede begins to fall apart because people can't be attached that way. Disappointed by his failure, Martin snaps. He starts to get physical with his captives, but during the scuffle, Martin gets hurt. At that moment, the scene suddenly changes. Martin is back in the underground garage where he works, sitting at his desk like nothing happened. It seems everything the audience just saw was a dream. After filming Wrapped, the editors spent months piecing everything together. The final product was 91 minutes of pure horror. The film didn't have a lot of dialogue, mostly screams and whimpers. Then they submitted it to the British Board of Film Classification for approval. But instead of getting approval, they got condemned. The UK Film Board flat out refused to give the film a certificate. They claimed the movie posed a real risk to cinema goers.
The look and atmosphere of this movie are disgusting. It being black and white and often dimly lit just makes this world look depressing and gives me this uncomfortable feeling.
Not getting approved meant the film couldn't be legally supplied anywhere in the UK, even on DVD or download. It was essentially banned across the country. As expected, the director was not happy with the board's decision. He issued a public statement criticizing their stance. He said, "Thank you for banning my film in this exceptional way. Apparently, I made a horrific horror film, but shouldn't a good horror film be horrific? Give people their own choice to watch it or not. If people can't handle or like my movies, they just don't watch them. If people like my movies, they have to be able to see it anytime, anywhere, also in the UK." For most films, a ban like this would have been the end of the story, but The Human Centipede was different. Instead of avoiding the controversy, the producers leaned into it, using the ban as a key part of their marketing strategy. In the trailer, they said Human Centipede banned in the UK poses a real risk that harm is likely to be caused to potential viewers. All the controversy made people in the UK more curious about the movie. They wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Even though the film couldn't be legally sold or shown in the UK, the internet was impossible to control. Thousands of Brits found ways to watch it, either by ordering import DVDs or streaming it online. Meanwhile, The Human Centipede premiered in other countries where it was not banned. As moviegoers entered theaters, they were given barf bags just in case the film made them throw up. Some theaters even parked ambulances outside in case viewers fainted in shock. During one premiere, the movie affected a woman so much that paramedics had to assist her. One movie critic who saw the film summarized it in this way: "It's not really a film one can or should enjoy. Sometimes just hearing a movie title is enough to tell you it's going to be disturbing." This next banned film is a perfect example of that. Faces of Death. Faces of Death is a film most people cannot handle, and in 1985, a teacher learned that lesson the hard way. In June of that year, a math teacher in California decided to show this film to a bunch of high school students. But two of the students who watched the movie were so affected by it that they developed an unnatural fear of dying and suffered emotional distress. Their families were so mad they sued the school district. In the end, the district had to pay a $100,000 settlement to the two families. That's how serious this apparently was. But what was in this film that made it so unbearable to watch? Faces of Death is a 1978 film that explores the topic of death, but it doesn't just talk about it, it shows it.
Now, a motion picture dares to take you beyond the threshold of the living, where you may discover your own face of death.
Almost every scene shows someone meeting their end in different ways: accidents, natural disasters, and more. But it's a movie, so those scenes must be fake, right? Well, approximately 60% of the film shows actual deaths caught on camera. The producers brought this footage from news stations, medical researchers, and even morgues. But the fake scenes weren't any easier to watch. They were so realistic that viewers couldn't tell the difference from the real footage. To achieve this, the producers studied crime crime scene photos to make sure their special effects looked exactly like the real thing. Faces of Death is split into different sections. One segment features an interview with a hitman where he speaks about taking lives like it's nothing. Another scene shows a gunfight between a SWAT team and an armed criminal. There's even a segment about animals. The film runs for 105 minutes, dragging viewers through one disturbing scene after another. However, the movie tries to end on a positive note. The final scene shows a mother holding her newborn baby, almost as if the filmmakers were trying to calm the audience after all the unsettling content they just watched. The film was released in November 1978, and the public reaction was explosive. Given that most of the scenes were real, viewers felt the movie crossed every possible line. One reviewer described the film as crude, tasteless exploitation footage. He ended by saying people should be ashamed to watch this garbage. As the complaints piled up, the movie was banned in about 46 countries. In the UK, Faces of Death was placed on the video nasty list. This meant it was illegal to sell or rent the film there. Australia and New Zealand followed suit, banning the film in the 1980s. Over time, some countries lifted the bans, but even in places where it's allowed, the film has a dark reputation. And honestly, most people wouldn't dare watch it even if they were given the chance. Movies influence us more than we realize. Watching too much graphic content can actually desensitize us to it, which is sometimes a scary thing. My friends, choose very wisely what you watch because it matters way more than you think. Visual Venture. If you guys like this video, click here to watch my video on documentaries banned for being too disturbing, which is pretty much like this one. You guys are the best. Here's to a wonderful
an indie game dev streamer who promoted the idea that anyone can make a game. With the help of a definitely not fake, sultry, deep voice, he became the biggest indie game developer creator on all of Twitch and YouTube. However, all of that came crashing down once people figured out that his entire persona was a lie. He claimed to have been working in the gaming industry for over 20 years. The reality is, his daddy got him a job in QA at Blizzard, and from there he went on to send phishing emails, basically asking people politely for the passwords. Obviously, that calls into question his supposed expertise, but he is always primarily focused on indie games, and he has made an indie game, so who cares if all of his experience at Blizzard is fake? The question we should be asking is his indie game any good? I mean, the answer is obviously no, but how bad really is it? It's worse than you could possibly imagine. What made me look into the game in the first place was being shown the code from the game, and I say with no exaggeration, it is the worst I have ever seen. It is baffling in the sense that I genuinely believe it was made bad on purpose. But I'll leave the code review till the end of the video, but just keep that in mind while I'm describing the game, that the underlying code is a jumbled mess of incoherent nonsense. So without further ado, subscribe to Lord Frogmire, and let's look at this absolute piece of shit. So let's start with going over the gameplay, and we're going to be able to go over literally every single piece of gameplay that is not walking or talking, because there is genuinely that little. Within a single route of the game, because that's all I played, you could not pay me $10,000 to play any more of this game. There are exactly 3 puzzle sections, 5 total puzzles, and this is being very generous with what I consider a puzzle, by the way. A single combat section, 1 battle, yes, 1, that is repeated, so that's 2 total battles, but only 1 unique fight, and 2 minigames. That's it. If you want to be extremely generous, there is 1 more minigame, puzzle. Literally all you do is click on a couple objects. Yes, that's literally it, but technically that's better than just walking and talking. This was a Kickstarter game, by the way. A Kickstarter game that advertised its combat, which its only unique combat encounter was advertised in the Kickstarter campaign that was funded in 2017 and raised $20,000. So in 8 years, he could not make a single combat encounter that he advertised as a primary part of the game with $20,000, let alone all of the sales the game got once it was released in early access. So while I'm going over the very limited gameplay that actually exists in the game, remember that this was a Kickstarter scam that was advertised as a real RPG with real gameplay. Okay, so our first section of gameplay is a log pushing puzzle. Yes, this is how generous I was being when I said there were 5 puzzles in the game. I don't think there's really anything to discuss here, because if there wasn't so few gameplay sections to begin with, no one would ever mention this. Okay, now we have the first and only unique combat encounter that was shown in the Kickstarter trailer. It is a WarioWare minigame compilation and is perfectly serviceable for a tutorial encounter. Not all of the combat in the entire game. All it is 4 very simple micro games where if you succeed, the enemy takes damage, and if you fail, you take damage. That's it. Perfectly serviceable, but very simple, very basic. This encounter is about 1 minute long. And remember, that is 1 of 2 encounters that are in the game. From here, we now have 3 puzzles in a row. Only 1 more puzzle exists in the game after this. And if I wasn't being so generous, I wouldn't call them puzzles at all. And I don't mean that they're easy. Do you remember those little things that babies use, where it's a circle hole and a circle block and a triangle hole and a triangle block? That's what I would call an easy puzzle. What makes it a puzzle is you still have options. You could fuck up and try and put the triangle block in the circle hole. That's not what these puzzles are. These, you have a square hole and a square block and literally nothing else. You cannot fail these. There is only one option. If you try the only possible thing, you will complete the puzzle. Look at this first puzzle. You can only push these blocks and nothing else. You can only push those blocks in one direction, nowhere else, and that's all you have to do. Push those 2 blocks in the only places they can possibly go, and you have now completed the puzzle. And you might say, maybe that's just to teach you the mechanics, but it doesn't get better from there. Puzzle number 2. All you can interact with are the switches. There is nothing else you can do. All you have to do is keep activating switches until you win. You could close your eyes. You do not have to think. There is no fail state. You just hit the switches until you succeed. Hit every switch to complete the puzzle. That's what I'm talking about when I say it's square peg and square hole. All you have to do is try and you succeed. As long as you are engaging with the game at all, you're moving forward. There is no thought necessary at all. That's why I don't consider it a puzzle. There is no triangle block for you to put in the square hole. And puzzle number 3 is literally the exact same thing as puzzle number 1. All you have to do is push the only blocks that you could possibly push in the only direction they will possibly go, then you flip the switches and you've succeeded. Literally no thought whatsoever. It's not a puzzle, but I'm being generous, so we'll give it to them. There are now 4 puzzles in the game, and you see the quality. 1 combat encounter, 4 puzzles. We're almost done with all of the gameplay, by the way. Gameplay that was in the game in 2017. After this, you get the final combat encounter in the entire game, which is the exact same fight as before, except this time you get to fight him for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So that means in this game that has been developed for over 8 years, There is 3 minutes and 30 seconds of combat. $20,000, by the way. Do you feel scammed yet? Well, we still have one more puzzle and 2 mini games to go, so save your judgment. This last puzzle is the only thing I would even consider a puzzle in the game, and all it is you're searching a room for clues to a 4-digit code. Yup, that's it. But it is a puzzle. You do have to try and figure out what the numbers are. So I'll give it to him. The game has a one real puzzle. And the best part about it is you can just skip it. If you don't want to do it, the game tells you can just input 7 ones and it'll let you through anyway. Who knows what the punishment is for that, but I'm sure it doesn't matter. I did actually do the puzzle though, because I wanted to experience all this game had to offer. Was it worth it? Honestly, at this point, yes it was, because at least I got to play some video game in my video game. Okay, moving on. We're almost done. On to the first mini game of only 2, so it better be worth it. It is a game in which you get a picture of either a sandwich or a soda, and then you have to give them the sandwich or soda in the order they ask for. So if they ask for soda sandwich, you give them a soda, then you give them a sandwich. They ask for sandwich, you give them a sandwich, and then a sandwich. Does this sound fun? Does it sound interesting? Does it sound like it took 8 years to make? And that's half of all of the mini games in this video game is this. Just soak it in for a second. I want you to burn this into your mind, because when we move on to talk about the code and how bad it is, I want you to keep in mind what he's coding, like what he's doing this for. Think to yourself, could this be done in RPG Maker? So far, except the one and only combat encounter, there is nothing here that could not be done in RPG Maker with literally no coding at all. But maybe this last minigame will change my mind. It'll truly blow everything else out of the water. Nope, it's just as bad as everything else. Come on, what did you expect? This is something that you make for your first game. It is one step beyond Hello World. It is a game in which you must dodge falling objects. Yes, I know, you're technically supposed to be running forward, but programming-wise, that's literally all it is. You're dodging falling objects while trying to hit the object you want. That's it. There's nothing else to it. This is something you teach a middle schooler how to do for their very first coding class, and that's all of the gameplay in the whole game. And looking at all this, I just don't get it. Like, I'm genuinely confused. When Pirate Software told everyone that he worked on video games for 20 years, that he worked as a hacker, why did anyone believe him when this was what he was putting out? Why did it take this long for people to call him out for being a fraud when this is his magnum opus that took him 8 years? 8 years of perfecting your craft for something a middle schooler could make. This isn't the work of a professional. This isn't even the work of an amateur. It's pathetic. The worst part is, after scamming his own fans out of $20,000 and more, he has the balls to bait you into thinking there was another boss fight. You are seconds away from fighting an enemy literally called boss, and it fakes you out with a fake battle screen only to give a shitty Chrono Trigger-esque judgment segment where you hurt the boss by making good decisions. This is what I'm talking about, where I say it's baffling that it's taken this long for someone to call this guy out. He's been literally scamming and fucking with his own fans for years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's time to talk about the story, and that was clearly the focus of the game, because the gameplay is only about, and I'm being very generous here, 10 minutes. So the rest of this entire game is walking around and talking to NPCs. So is the writing good? I mean, come on, that's not even a rhetorical at this point, because I know you're not asking it. Obviously it's bad. Of course it's bad, but compared to the gameplay, it's not that bad. I would describe it as general 13-year-old girl writing, like maybe something you'd see on someone's Tumblr fan fiction account, like about that level. There are a couple really cringy lines of dialogue that are funny, like he unironically says sad armadillo noises, but it doesn't really get any more interesting than that. The real problem with the story of this game is the same problem you see in any teenage writing, that the game never gives you a reason to care about anything. anything. Going back to that fake out boss fight, this is a boss fight where it's revealed that it's your mom, that you have mommy issues, and you defeat her by evil, and then it checks your previous actions to see if they line up with her beliefs. And if you defied her and were a good person, you defeat her. It's clearly supposed to be a big emotional moment. The problem is we have no reason to care about any of this because before this exchange, there's literally only one encounter with your mom that you weren't even there for. It's a flashback of your mom talking to your dad where she calls you lazy and the dad pathetic. That's it. There's nothing else. There is no other reason to believe the mom is even abusive, let alone so evil that we had to have a boss fight about it. And that's not even the worst part. Where she chastises you for your decisions, they include decisions you didn't even make. She accuses you of killing this character when I didn't even have the option. If I knew I could kill that character, I probably would have. It would have been funny. So when she's like, oh, I bet you killed that guy, and you're like, no, I would never do that. Except I would totally do that. I just never got the option. It doesn't show good moral character to just not press A on every possible thing. And the worst example of the game failing to make you care about something is the whole point of the game. The reason why you're doing everything in the center of your character is that your dog dies. Your talking dog, who's your best friend, dies, and you must go save him, sort of. Yeah, it really seems like he's dead forever, but that's what you're trying to do, is save him. The problem being, you literally only spend the first 5 minutes of the game with the dog. Why in the fuck should I care about this dog? I've spent no time with him. I know nothing about him. I know they're friends. That's it. That's like someone going up to you and being like, hey, my neighbor's brother's daughter's dog died. Isn't that sad? And you'd be like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's sad. That sucks. But I don't care. It doesn't make me want to play this whole game and fight for whatever. You have to get me to care about this. Show me how the dog helped him deal with his abusive mother. You have to show me that. This is literally first grade writing, by the way, by a 40-year-old man. Yes, this game that looks like it was made by a teenage girl and is written like it was made by a teenage girl was made by a 37-year-old man. I mean, there really isn't anything else to talk about the story. Nothing happens. The real problem is the game doesn't have real characters. They're all just caricatures. The only character that has more than a handful of lines is the main character, and the only thing I know about him is that he cares about his dog and he has an abusive mother. Maybe he's a bit sarcastic sometimes. I don't even know what he likes, what he dislikes. What does he have fun doing? How does he feel about things? Is he right wing? Is he left wing? How would he feel about the Federal Reserve? I don't know. I don't know anything about him. And I actually read every piece of mandatory dialogue. It's not like I was just skipping through things. The game is just so busy trying to make funny lines that are profoundly cringe that it never tries to say anything about anything. Actually, it does try and make one statement. It does have a line about how in the corporate world, you never go up, you only go sideways. No, Thor, that's just you, and it's because you're bad. No one was ever going to promote you out of QA when you can't fucking program, you can't write, and you're clearly an idiot. And what doesn't help the story is how much you know he's holding back, and for no reason. Another very common novice writer mistake is focusing too much on the reveal and not enough on the buildup. After your dog dies, you're feeling constant guilt, where it's like, oh, it's your fault, you killed the dog, and it doesn't make any sense. Because how the dog dies is you're just asleep and you wake up and the dog is dead. It has nothing to do with you. A monster killed it while you were asleep. It couldn't possibly be your fault. So clearly there is some kind of reveal later in the game where the dog died for a real reason and the monster's not real or something like that. Because as it is now, it doesn't make any sense. I have no reason to be like, I killed this dog. I didn't do anything, and neither did the kid. And there's no reason for him to feel this way. It just doesn't make sense. So the story's bad, the gameplay's bad. What else is there? What could possibly make this game worth playing? Well, one of the big selling points is the multiple routes. that all of your decisions matter. I've already told you I only played one route, the good route, and if you've listened to a single word I've said so far, you know exactly why. But let me tell you now, the decision making is just as bad as the rest of the game. You literally have an evil voice telling you which is the bad option and which is the good option. It is literally as overt as listen to this character's problems and be nice, or kill them. And just in case it's slightly more subtle than hitting you in the back of the head with a sledgehammer, you have the evil voice in your head telling you what the evil option is. No, the choices obviously don't matter, because being forced to play this game again is a form of cruel and unusual punishment. But that's the whole game. That's it. And why do you think there is so little? Probably because there's only one completed chapter. Yes, that's it. You have one chapter about, who knows, maybe half of chapter 2, maybe it's 75%. I have no idea how much more there could be. And then the very opening of chapter 3. That's all that's completed in 8 years. He's completed one chapter of an unplayably bad game. So yeah, maybe there's more character development in the rest of the game, and maybe they'll make me really care about that dead dog. But I have the strangest feeling that none of that's ever going to happen, that the game is never going to be finished, because at this rate, it's going to take him the rest of his life. He will die before this game is completed. So is the game worth playing? No. Is it bad? Obviously. This is something a teenage girl makes for a school project in RPG Maker, not something made by a nearly 40-year-old man on a 3-person team. Now it's finally time to talk about the code. Now that you have the full context, you can understand not only why is this bad, but why it was completely unnecessary, because the entire game could be made with no coding at all in RPG Maker. 99% of the game is just walking around and talking to people. RPG Maker games with no RPG elements that are just walking and talking have been made since the beginning of fucking time. This game would actually be better if it was made in RPG Maker, because he fucked up something as simple as just showing text on the screen. How the game works is you left click to enter dialogue. Then if you're going to progress the text, which you're going to have to do if you can read at a first grade level, you must then right click. Then if you want to move on to the next text box, you can't right click, you have to left click again. So just reading is this song and dance of left click, right click, left click, left click, right click, left click. Do you see how that might get annoying really fucking fast? Or if you're as bored as I was, it's the only fun part of the game. Anyway, there you go. That's it. This is the code I wanted to talk about. No, it's not the 1000 element switch statement. Yes, that's real. No, it's not the array of flags with 560 elements all listed out in a row. Yes, that exists also. It's just this. Now, if you've never coded before, you might not understand why this is so bad, that this was so shocking that it made me create this video. Let me start by explaining what a switch is. The switch is a form of go to, because literally all it does is go to a section of code. That's it. In this case, we take the argument global.storylineArray333. God, that is insane to say, by the way. And based on what that value is, we go to that case. So if the value is 1, we go to case 1. If the value is 2, we go to case 2. And this doesn't have to be in order. You could have case 333 and then case 12 right after that. You can do whatever you want. It's just whatever the value is, we go to the case that has that value. Now, the much simpler version of this is an if statement. All an if statement is if whatever is in those parentheses is true, then we do what's in that block. Now that you understand those two things, you are now a better programmer than our hacker genius here. Because what you see here is complete absurdity. He does not know the purpose of an if statement or a switch or how to use them. I'm gonna give you 1 second to see what is wrong with the switch. All right? You ready? Why is it not an if? Why is there code that even says do nothing? Wanna know how you do nothing in code? You just don't write it. So if we delete case 2, again, there's nothing there. There's nothing to do. If we just got rid of it, it'd be exactly the same. We are now left with a switch that has a singular case. So what that means is we check, what is the value of our global whatever the fuck? If it is 1, we go to case 1. And there is nothing else to check because there are no other cases. Do you see the problem now? We could literally just write this as an if statement. And what's the peak absurdity is that's literally what he did directly above this. So he did it right, then immediately did it wrong right after. And even then, it's still not correct. I'll give you one more programming concept. There's something called a bool. That is what the if statement is checking for. It's checking for a Boolean. A Boolean is either true or false. However, that can also be represented as a number, where 0 is false and everything else is true. So in this if statement, he's asking, is global array whatever the fuck equal to 1? Do you see the problem there? He literally has a comment confirming that what is in that array is a Boolean. So there is no reason to be checking for anything. All you do is put global.storyline array 367 and then end it there, and it works exactly the same. And then he could just do the exact same thing right below that, global.storyline array 333, and then end it there. No switch statement, no nothing, just an if. And I'm not even going to talk about how both of those blocks of code are literally doing the exact same thing. Both of them are only calling instance destroyed. So you could literally do an or there, and then you can combine all of it into one line. And this is the point. This is why it makes me mad, because he wants his code to be big. That's the point. I've seen a bunch of code reviews on his code. 2 very great videos about this, but I had to make this video because they don't point out what's important is he's doing this intentionally. He's clearly doing this to make himself look smarter because his dumb fans who don't know how to code look at that and think, whoa, look at all that code. He must be a genius. He thinks more code equals better code because he's an idiot and his fans are stupid too. Look at here. I'll just give you one more example. Look at this. Do you see how it's a list of things where he's literally doing the exact same thing every time? All of this could be done with a single for loop. Yes, just one loop. Literally, all for loop is we do one thing over and over again until we hit the number of repetitions we want. And we can increment by any amount we want. In this case, we would definitely increment by 1. And the cool thing is we get access to that incrementer, so we don't have to write the number every single time. But do you see the problem with that is he would have less code and then it would look less cool. He wants these giant blocks of code. He's an idiot. He's dumb. He thinks big blocks of code means he's doing a lot of work. What a fucking dipshit. Can you imagine him just typing out over and over and over again, line after line after line of the exact same thing, being like, man, I guess there's no better way of doing this. Maybe he's that stupid. Honestly, he probably is. But at least part of it has to be him trying to look cool with these giant chunks of text. That's why he doesn't use loops. That's why he used a switch statement when he could use an if. That's why he's checking if true equals true. Yes, that's literally what this means. What he's typing here is true equals true. That's why he refuses to write true or false instead of 0 or 1, because numbers look cooler than true or false. That's why he refuses to use functions and will literally just repeat the exact same steps over and over again. It's because he wants to look cool. He's a child. Everything in this video so far can be explained by the fact that he is a man-child. He is a 37-year-old teenage girl. He codes like a teenager, he writes like a teenager, and he makes big, exaggerated lies just like a teenager. And just like a teenager, he will never admit when he's wrong. And that's why this entire controversy happened. It has nothing to do with Stop Killing Games. It has nothing to do with him letting his friends die in World of Warcraft. It's that he's a child who refuses to grow up. And if you give a child millions of dollars and a ton of attention, they will fuck up eventually. And he'll never learn. You just know he'll never learn. You don't get to 37 acting like a child and even have the capability of learning. And I want to make it very clear, there is nothing wrong with writing bad code. There's nothing wrong with making a bad game. There's nothing wrong with writing embarrassing dialogue. The problem with Pirate Software and why he is being mocked endlessly is he acts like an expert when he's worse than a novice. And the only reason he's this bad after working on a game for 8 years is because he already thinks he's perfect. When you think you're perfect, you have no reason to learn anymore. You should not be afraid of failing, of making shitty things. What you should be afraid of is not learning from it. But that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to Lord Frogmire. It is only thanks to my stream chat that I made this video in the first place. Maybe next stream we can go over all of his code. I'm sure people would love to see me tortured. Anyway, bye.
How absolutely abysmal this is for performance.
What's up guys, CJ here. Now, in my last video on this topic, I mentioned that, so unless anything new comes out that I think I can bring my unique perspective to, I'm gonna put Pirate Software behind me and just keep moving forward. One of Thor's criticisms of that video, when he wasn't busy trying to smear me as a grifter.
It's just another, like, YouTube grifter trying to fight for relevance, dude. That's all that shit is.
Despite the fact that my channel has been consistent for the past 5 years, is that I wasn't specific enough.
You can review languages, many concepts are transferable. Concepts can be transferable, but specifics are not, and that's the problem.
Today's video sponsor is me. I built this platform called getcracked.io, which focuses on covering everything that is not lead code related to the technical interview, for languages like Python, Rust, C++. That involves concepts like language knowledge, networking, operating systems, concurrency, computer architecture, etc. As you can see, we have over 600 problems that will really test and sharpen your skill set. Check it out. And so I figured maybe I can look for new information that I can bring my unique perspective to. Other creators, including myself, have covered the code snippets that he has shared publicly on stream. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I can address Thor's critique by finding code that he's written off stream to really get into the details? So I decided to scour Pirate's website on the Wayback Machine and noticed that he actually included his source code resources as early as 2018. Just to be clear, these are the resources for his demo version of Heartbound. I was able to extract the code that he's written using data.win and the Undertale mod tool, and I'd like to focus on that for today's code review. Now, I know that a lot of people might be thinking, why are you doing a review on old code? Well, I decided to compare that 2018 version of the code that Thor himself distributed with the code available in the demo version of Heartbound, and at least at the places that I found major issues, there wasn't any difference. Now, I also want to stress that this video is going to be made in line with my own values as a developer. That being that we are reviewing mistakes so that others can learn from them. And in doing so, I will be providing alternative solutions. That doesn't mean that my solutions are the best improvement that can be made or a silver bullet that can apply in every scenario. But it will give you an idea for a general direction that you might want to take your own project in case you encounter similar issues throughout your development. Now, I'm going to be categorizing issues in this review based off their priority or severity rather. So we're going to be starting with large or major issues, then going to medium or intermediate issues, and then ending off with small or minor issues. So let's get into it. I want to start by observing his lighting engine by taking a look at the file drawLight. Let's take a look at this drawLight method and hone in on the first case statement. Let's break down at a high level what's going on here. Thor loops over every pixel in a sprite, checking if each pixel touches or overlaps with a certain object. If it does, it then applies a light effect repeatedly, and with each repeat, it makes that light fade more diffuse. He then draws said colored pixels at that location to simulate the light fall off. Now, let's say your sprite is 128 by 128 pixels. That's 16,384 position checks he's doing per frame per light source. If he has multiple light sources or is trying to run at 60 FPS, you will feel the lag. Now, he actually checks collisions twice for each pixel, and he doesn't have any early exit should his second instance of that check not execute.
If light diffuse is 5, it's possible that he does an additional 4 iterations that returns false every single time. In the case that we have the exact same 128 by 128 pixel sprite, that is not just 16,384 checks. That's 98,304 checks at worst. What's worse is if you observe the second case, where light comes from the right instead of the left, you'll notice that Thor copied and pasted the entire left code into the right code's case, only changing the signage of light distance. What he could have done here is handled both right and left in the same case and simply applied the signage to light distance based off the direction of the light, and also applied the direction in which we iterate in the for loop differently based off that same signage. How do we improve upon the code here? Well, we really don't. We throw it out in favor of layers, surfaces, and shaders. I decided to bring on a game dev who has years of experience in GameMaker, working not only on his own hobby projects, but also as a contractor for a studio in order to explain this fundamental concept.
I'll just draw a little diagram. This is basically how his code works. He has a sprite that basically looks something like this. This is sort of like a beam shape, kind of what you'd expect from like a beam of light. For every pixel in the sprite, so each one of these is a pixel. It's basically going in the draw event and doing a collision check at like each pixel. And it's basically checking and checking and checking, and if the pixel is on the sprite, it'll draw it. This is the starting point over here, and the farther away the pixel is from the starting point, it like blends it differently, and that'll create some kind of gradients. But yeah, this is a terrible way of doing it. I drew, like 5 pixels here. This is like super scaled up. A sprite like this would be like hundreds and hundreds of pixels, and to check each of them on the X and the Y like coordinate, like every single frame for every single like object doing this is going to be like abysmal for performance. The way that I had suggested would be better is you have the sprite, same one, and also any other sprites you want to do this with. So keep in mind, if you're using this system, every single other object that's like a light beam or whatever is going to have to run this code like independently of each other. With this method, all the objects at once, say you just have some random other objects over here that you also wanted to be light sources or something, I guess. All of them at once can draw themselves onto a surface. A surface is basically a picture almost, just made of pixels. You can make them any size you want, but in this case, all we'd have to do is make the surface the size of the camera. This would basically just be starting point, wherever the camera is in the room, right here. And these are all the objects that the camera would be seeing. We would just create a white surface, basically, just a surface that is just completely opaque. And these objects will draw themselves onto this surface. And before they do that, they'll set their GPU blend mode to subtract. So what that does basically is if I were to draw like this square here onto this white surface while the GPU mode is in subtract, it'll basically just erase right here. Like it'll take a chunk out of this white surface basically. And this area here will be like transparent on the surface. Like the pixels will have an alpha of 0, meaning you'll just be able to see through them basically. So all these objects just need to draw themselves onto this white surface. And this basically makes it like, it's kind of like they're like little cutouts basically. And then what you do is you have a separate surface, and this is very common. A lot of lighting systems will use a surface like what I'm about to describe, where it's just completely like transparent, and then any light sources or gradients or light beams, whatever, draw themselves onto this surface. Most lighting systems you'll see, unless they're using shaders, they'll usually use a surface like this where they will draw any lights. Think of this as like a gradient. Draw any lights they want just onto this surface basically. Usually they'll use some fancy stuff with blend modes and all that to make it look good. Literally doesn't matter here. And then what you do is you take this surface, you set the blend mode to subtract again, and you draw it on top of this surface. So you set the target surface to this one, and then you draw this surface on top of it, basically. And that will result in this surface. I guess I'll draw the result surface here. It'll basically result in only the transparent parts of this surface will remain like on this surface. So see right here we have this little beam shape. So you would only be able to see like the parts of this little circle gradient basically through this this cutout shape, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you'll still have your light diffuser, light fall off there as well.
Yeah, and you can make this, I mean, another limitation of this only goes, from what I can tell, directly like right or directly left. It does not seem to be able to rotate or go up and down. Now, I suppose you could do some weird stuff to get it to rotate, like maybe draw it onto a separate surface and rotate it, but it's still very suboptimal. With this, let's say I wanted to rotate this beam. This beam right here is going directly to the right. I could literally just draw it like this, like in a different direction. And the gradient would remain the same. It would be a lot easier. You wouldn't have to do any weird, trickery to get it to do that. What I'm saying is this sort of method supports like any shapes and any orientation, and it's much, much better for performance, like drastically.
To really reinforce why this is classified as a major issue in Pirate Software's code, Level 5 Fish decided to profile it against his own surface-based implementation. The comparison code is available on GitHub, linked in the description, and the full 7-minute explanation by Level 5 Fish is available for my patrons and junior dev level channel members. Here's the 2-minute summary.
So I've taken the lighting code and I've imported it into GameMaker. Now, the only things I've changed are this line right here, where it says it's just a conditional basically, and I've just replaced it with true, meaning it's always going to run. And the reason for doing that is because whenever this was here, it would just flicker, so I just took it out. The other thing is I've added this variable here. This will allow us to track how many times a pixel is drawn. So every time this line is run, it will add to this value here. If I press T, it'll display that value, and we can see how many times it's running and how many times it's doing a collision check. I have this sprite here. This is a 800 by 100 sprite. So somewhat large, but not absurdly large, and is not something that's like unrealistic to see in actual projects by any means. I've added it here to this room. It's using this lighting script to draw sort of a gradient of light over it. So we're going to see what happens when I run the project. We have kind of a gradient rectangle basically, but I don't know if you notice something. We are getting less than 20 FPS. That code is running the collision check and the drawing the pixels 80,000 times. I've also gone and created the system that I had previously described that involves using surfaces. So here it is the same sprite, the same rectangle, except it's using this other lighting system. This one right here that I've created. So let's see what happens when I run this project. As you can see, it looks basically the same, except oh wow, our FPS is actually there. I'm actually going to run this in debug mode, and debug mode will allow us to run a profiler, which actually will tell us basically what percentage of performance each one of these objects are using. This was the lighting code created by Pirate Software. It is using 99.675% of performance, roughly. This is the implementation that I came up with, and I'll note it's really nothing complex. It's not super difficult, I think, for most people to make something similar. 0.238% performance. The idea is pretty clear here. Just how absolutely abysmal this is for performance.
I now want to move on to an issue that I would classify as having medium severity, and that is the way that Pirate structures dialogue in this game. Now, the way that he does so is via a two-dimensional array called dialogue array, similar to the one-dimensional array that he had for his event timeline. For every single language and every scene, he checks in a GML file that contains this 2D dialogue array. This adds a lot of bloat to your code, makes it less navigatable, and also it limits scalability. So as you can see here, each language and each scene has its own file. He also has another 2D array called voice list. Now, the first index of voice list is character, and the second is the emotion that that character feels. As you can see, if character 1 has emotion 2, well then this is the sound file that he refers to. If character 1 has emotion 19, well then I guess this magic number just needs to do. Now, how did I know that the first index is the character and the second is the emotion? Well, I wouldn't know just by looking at this. I would have to search for voice list, and it just so happens that this is the only part of his code where I'm able to tell that the first index is character index, and the second index is the selected emotion for that character. What I would do, instead of checking in these files, would be to ship them with my game's local files and assets. I would then partition the dialogue assets by localization. Notice how in my chapter1.json file, we have scenes, and scenes has multiple keys, each the name of a particular scene. We start off with Book Dream Intro, which was the name of one of his files that contained a bunch of dialogue. We then go through every dialogue within the list of Book Dream Intro. Each of those nodes contains a speaker, a dialogue ID, a text, emotion, volume, replies, and optionally a next scene if we need to move forward. Speaker will pull up the sprite for Ralph. Dialogue ID can be used to reference said dialogue node later. Text is what we display on screen. Emotion relates to the voice that's being used. We also have an optional list of replies. By optional, I mean it can either be empty or it can contain several nodes. Each one of those nodes contains a text and a next scene. So once a user selects one of those nodes, for example, selects the no you didn't, the next scene moves on to the denial response. As you can see, the denial response scene also has its own separate speaker, text, dialogue ID, volume, replies, and pushes you to the next scene. There's really 101 ways to build up on what I just suggested. None of what I mentioned includes obfuscation or saving of dialogue options, but it's better than what exists currently. In fact, it's probably the bare minimum you'd expect from somebody with 8 years of experience in GameMaker. Now let's move on to the minor category. There are several things I'd like to bring up, and I'll try to do so as quickly as possible. My first criticism is useless code. Thor's code is littered with it. Take a look at this case, for example. It contains a switch statement that switches on an object index, but doesn't actually do anything with that index. Instead, it defaults to the damage polarity, either 1 or -1. I've never seen anybody write code like this. Interns that I've mentored, junior developers, it's just really odd and doesn't do anything. A static code analyzer will most likely pick up on this. Many IDEs either come with them built in or support third-party static code tools, so if you're not already using one, consider doing so. You'd also think that a game as art-rich as this would have some sort of color palette instead of just hard-coding colors. The next is unexplained constants. They are everywhere. I brought this up in my original video, and a lot of people said that the magic numbers I referred to weren't really magic numbers because you can use IntelliSense to tell what the actual parameter names are associated with those numbers. Putting aside the fact that nobody should need to hover over a method for 2 seconds to tell what the actual parameters stand for, let alone do this for over 20 methods, magic numbers in their purest form are everywhere in Thor's code. There's at least half a dozen in each file, maybe even more. Take a look at the 100 million here for active color, or the 765 that aren't really explained. In many places where Thor performs I/O operations, he never first checks whether or not that file exists, or whether or not he has permissions to read from or write to that file. Therefore, he never actually handles any exceptions or errors that may result from said operations. Now, I want to make this very clear. If this is your first time coding, good on you. The purpose of this channel is not to discourage, it's to encourage. But what we're seeing here is a repeated pattern of behavior of somebody that claims to have over 8 years worth of experience, at least in GameMaker, and 20 years of experience in the game industry as a developer. But contrary to how much experience they should have, how much they brag about their accomplishments, there's a massive incongruity between what they can produce and who they say they are. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It goes a long way. If you guys would like to go above and beyond, consider becoming a member or patron. You guys get access to a bunch of really cool and exclusive perks. I want to shout out GeekyBit, Level 5 Fish, and Kevin Core Devs for helping to make this video a reality. For those of you that want to check out their links, those of them that want to feature their links will have their links featured on screen. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.
Save your time with CC character bases.
nothing too crazy happened. I feel like every time I take a break, like, a war breaks out or something, but thankfully that did not happen.
But at least we found out the real Epstein files were the friends we made along the way.
Welcome back to the Shoe on Head channel. If it is your first time here, run. I am Shoe on Head, and on this channel I like to cover cultural issues mostly surrounding men's issues. It's what I've been doing for over a decade, and frankly, I'm exhausted. Many of you have been along for the ride, and you have seen me go from a chipper, lively 24-year-old making fun of BuzzFeed and Tumblr feminists, to a bitter, calloused 34-year-old talking about very real and growing men's issues. One of the main men's issues I have been covering in great detail lately has been the male loneliness epidemic. Yeah, but turns out I was wrong. We don't have a male loneliness epidemic. We have a male loser epidemic. It's not a male loneliness epidemic. No, it's a male mediocrity epidemic. It's a male loser epidemic.
The male loser epidemic has gotten so bad that it's honestly so pathetic at this point.
Now, I don't always talk about men's issues. No, sometimes I talk about politics, and sometimes I mix the two together. Now, I know a lot of you don't like politics, you don't care about politics, but politics cares about you, and it will enter your life no matter how hard you try to avoid it. But thankfully, I have the perfect app to help you navigate this difficult, confusing political landscape. So let's quickly give a shout out to today's sponsor, Ground News, before we get into this video, shall we? Ground News is a website and an app that gives readers a fun and transparent way to read the news from all across the political spectrum, from left, right, and center. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, ownership, and headlines that helps you understand the full story and make sure you're getting both sides. One of my favorite features from Ground News has to be the blind spot feature, which shows you news stories that have been covered by only one side of the political spectrum and ignored by the other. For example, here is a story about how the CIA uncovered a Russiagate fraud, and right away we can see how it has been covered by 41 sources, and out of those 41 sources, 93% of them lean right, with only 2 left-wing outlets reporting the story. Ground News also makes it really easy to compare headlines to see just how political bias can affect the framing of a story. For example, this story about Zohran Mamdani winning the Democratic primary in New York. This left-leaning outlet says Zohran Mamdani's win just got a little sweeter. And meanwhile, the right-wing outlet says, meet Zohran Mamdani, the man who will ruin New York. As you can see, very different vibes. I have been using Ground News since 2021 because I think it is so informative, so fun, and it helps me see how different stories are framed so differently, and I love it. I highly recommend it. It's one of the few apps that I wake up and just immediately check. But don't just take my word for it. Even the Nobel Peace Center called it an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. High praise. Best of all, I am currently offering 40% off their Vantage plan, which is the plan I use to access all of their amazing features. This comes out to only like $5 a month, which is like the price of a coffee. So go to ground.news/shoe or use the QR code right there on screen, or the link in the video description down there to subscribe to Ground News today. I feel like what they're doing is really important, especially right now, and it helps us approach the news in a more fair and balanced way. So thank you to Ground News for sponsoring this video, and thank you, the viewer, for not skipping the ad. Right? Now, let's get back to the video. With all these issues men are facing, they seem to be moving to the right and the Republicans more, since the left and Democrats have essentially just become the young men eat and die movement. Months ago, I covered how the Democratic Party was losing young men, and I predicted Kamala Harris would lose in part because of young men overwhelmingly voting for Trump. And I was correct. Well, now the Democrats have unveiled their final solution to the right-wing male loser epidemic. Democrats spending millions to learn how to speak to American men and win back the working class. Democrats have blown millions of dollars on efforts to appeal to American men who turned to President Donald Trump in droves on Election Day in hopes of winning back the working class. Democrats have spent $20 million on their efforts, with donors and strategists holing up in luxury hotel rooms, brainstorming how to convince working class men to return to the party. Ah yes, nothing more relatable to working class men than luxury hotel rooms. Great job, guys. The plan? Codename SAM, or Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, promises to use the funds to study the syntax language and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. The effort also recommends Democrats buy advertisement in video games, among other things. The Democratic Party is treating young men like exotic animals they're studying. Now, as you can see here is the young man in his natural habitat, in a dark, messy cave surrounded by Taco Bell wrappers and empty Mountain Dew bottles. Here is another young man, as you can see, also dwelling in a dark cave. This one has dyed his hair blue to scare off potential predators. Unfortunately, it also scares off potential mates, but moving on, here is another young man, we think. We're not quite sure about this one. We're still studying it. Listen, Democrats, instead of spending $20 million to do that stupid maybe you should, I don't know, actually listen to men. I listen to men for free all the time. All I have to do is read my comment section. Let's see here. Shoe on Head is a perfect example of why we need to repeal the 19th. Greetings from Albania. I hate women so much it's unreal. Ooh, shoo, mommy, milkies, 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 mommy, mommy, mommy. One time I got my penis stuck in a soda bottle. Okay, on second thought, maybe my comment section is not the best source.
Since Trump scored big with young male voters last election, Democrats are spending $20 million to learn how to speak their language. I think it's a waste of money. Maybe these guys should spend their money on teaching men to not be such sexists. Maybe that's
But the stats don't bear that out now. Look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash.
Oh no. The very night I was sitting on my couch writing the script to my video about how the Democrats are spending $20 million to relate to young men, this came on my TV on Fox News. A Tommy Lahren and Laura Ingraham segment about stay-at-home sons, men who still live at home. Literally minutes after this aired, it went absolutely viral on Twitter for not good reasons. So we are going to unpack this piece by piece. Because even though everyone was mocking it and making fun of it, as far as I saw, nobody was really dissecting it and breaking down exactly why she was so egregiously wrong. So come join me in debunking the male loser epidemic. Because who else better equipped to talk about men's issues than two stupid blonde bimbos? Hold on one second. 3 stupid blonde bimbos. Sorry. I felt left out. All right, let's go. Wait. I need my gamer fuel. See? I do drink it. That one's for you, Tectone.
It's a major problem. And you know, Speaker Johnson has been talking about those maybe deadbeat folks that are on Medicaid, and maybe some of those folks are the stay-at-home sons. We don't know. But I'll tell you this, leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy, like a stay-at-home son. But Laura, I gotta tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates, people not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash. And that's why we have declining birth rates and a lot of other problems in society. It's time to go out, get a job, breathe the fresh air, meet people in real life. Let's just get back to basics. So first of all, this stay-at-home son thing is not a real thing. It was a random throwaway, self-deprecating joke some contestant on Jeopardy said. One f***ing guy. Because I guess there's nothing else important going on that they could cover on the news. They literally made this into a fake phenomena so they can on young men. Meanwhile, Democrats are spending millions of dollars trying to win back young men. Oh no, the young men are leaving us in droves. How do we get them back? Don't worry. I got this. Hey, you fat, lazy, Cheeto dust-covered slobs. F*** you. Nice. Thanks. I love you. I love you too. Is the amount of young men living home with their parents increasing? Yes. Is it because they're lazy bums and just want to order DoorDash all day? No.
And also, they're not paying for DoorDash, Tommy. They're financing it. Come on. Get with the times.
There are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash. And that's why we have declining birth rates. It's time to go out, get a job, breathe the fresh air.
Have either of you tried applying for a job as a young man recently? Or tried buying a house on the salary of one of these young men? Have you experienced the dating market, been on the dating sites as a young man? No? Interesting, okay. Just wondering. Listen, I know the average age of a Fox News viewer is like 70 nowadays and you need to pander to them, but Tommy, you are like 2 years younger than me. You know this shit isn't true. Why are you talking like this? Why are you talking like a f***ing boomer? I'm sorry, I have no other word for this, but I hate this like generational pick-me shit. I was born in the wrong generation. I'm not like those other young people. And you know what? She's not like those other young people. Not all young people can afford a nice nose job and lip filler and get a cushy job on Fox News based entirely on merit, I'm sure. The main problem with this brain-dead boomer-ass take is not only is it cringe, but it's completely divorced from reality. This slop is specifically designed for people who paid like $5 for a f***ing house. And listen, not all boomers, okay? My parents are boomers, they are lovely people. A lot of you guys are boomers, but when the baby boomer generation sends its people, it is not sending their best. They are not sending you. They're sending people who have lots of problems. They're bringing the housing crisis. They're bringing wage stagnation. They're falling for AI-generated photos on Facebook. But some, I assume, are good people. But my god, I truly believe they do not understand how good they had it. They could support a family on a single income. A single income from a job that didn't require a college degree. Their leaders didn't prostitute away their economic future for some cheap plastic shit from China. They inherited the greatest economy known to man, and they pretend it's a paradise that they earned. I just don't understand, like, why don't boomers and spiritual boomers like Tommy Lauren see people struggling and go, wow, I wish I could fix this. They should have it better than I had it. And you wonder why so many millennials and zoomers don't want kids. I want to make the world a better place for my children. I want to make the world a better place for my children. Ugh. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you spoiled brat. Children. Not happening.
Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men.
Young men are becoming lazy because they're becoming feminized. So they're becoming lazy because they act more like women? What did she mean by this, chat? I know there's like a decrease in testosterone or something happening, but men are moving right-wing all over the world. Does that correlate with the feminization? Or, I mean, there are suspiciously a lot of far-right femboys, so maybe. But here's the thing, Tammy. There is absolutely no evidence that young women want to start families more than young men. None. In fact, all the data says the exact opposite. According to Pew Research, 64% of women younger than 50 say they just don't want to have children. No reason, they just don't want them. Versus 50% of men who say the same. Another study by Archbridge Institute shows the same. 63% of women without children said they have no desire to have a child, while only 50% of men said the same. For men, the most commonly cited factor was personal finance, but among women, the strongest reason not to have a child was their desire to maintain their personal independence. Basically, they don't want to give up their brunch and mimosas. They've been ass-blasted with propaganda their whole lives, telling them their lives will be ruined, their bodies will be ruined, they'll never have fun again, they'll be miserable forever if they have children. And as someone who has had a children, best decision I've ever made. 10/10, highly recommend, would do it again. But yes, this idea that men are the ones primarily responsible for the low birth rates is laughable. We're laughing over here. But honestly, it's not really women or men's fault. There are a lot of factors that play into this. But Tommy, I really gotta ask, is it men or is it you?
This is gonna be the summer of canceling boys. All of my friends are attractive. All of my friends are successful. All of my friends have something going on. Almost every single one of them have an issue with men. But if all of these women, including myself, are having issues, then I have to think, it might not be us. It might be you. It is not just the guys in Los Angeles, Nashville, Dallas, and they're not any better in the Midwest. Quite frankly, I think they're trash all over this country.
My friends are successful. Men don't give a shit about that. They'd marry a Walmart cashier if she was nice to them.
I think men between the ages of 20 and 30 are not ready, in most cases, for marriage, are usually not ready to be husbands and fathers.
That's a cultural issue. So Look,
No, I would actually, back to your point, I think it's a biological thing.
So let me get this straight. Men are all trash and won't commit and won't leave mommy's basement, and they're destroying the birth rates. But also young men are biologically incapable of commitment and being parents. What? But wait, there's more! She also believes women don't have to bring anything to the table.
And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Never before in history have women demanded so much and offered so little. So before we get deeper into this retarded, manufactured, stay-at-home son narrative, let's check the Facebook comments of this Fox News video, because I am really interested to see what, like, the typical Fox News viewer thinks about this. If the women are anything like these two, I can hardly blame the men for staying home and not wanting to date them. Blame, blame, blame. These two women have a combined age of 93 and they have 0 children between both of them. You both have repugnant personality types, so listening to this was like male birth control to me. My goodness! Boomers are ruthless! Bunch of sissies. I served 6 years, 2 years in Southeast Asia after Vietnam was over. When I was 18, rent was $450 and I could afford to get my own place. She's so spot on. Nothing screams I'm a loser run from me than a guy living at home in his parents' house with his 12-year-old boy's bedroom decor at age of 30. Thank God we raised our sons to be men, who grew up, lived on their own, found their soulmate, got married, bought a beautiful home, and started a family. I was out the door at 18, worked on the assembly line at Dodge and in the Air Force at 19, never went back home. I can't relate to this. Yes, we know you people can't relate. We know. But the world has changed. Why can't you people get this through your heads? I will never let my sons stay home. I'm trying to push them out of the nest. Okay, I really gotta ask, is this an Anglo thing? Immediately kicking your kid out when they turn 18 years old? My Mediterranean mind cannot comprehend this. And honestly, why the f would a man leave home, leave his mother's cooking, for a woman who probably can't cook? Not me though. Personally, I can cook amazing homemade meals. I'll have you know I am a great trad wife. Bone apple teeth. Now, unfortunately, Tommy Lauren wasn't the only one pushing this stupid, lazy young men go get a job bullshit. Mike Johnson did it referencing 29-year-old men playing video games all day. Steve Scalise did it with 35-year-old men playing video games all day. And just the other night, I saw this on my TV. Again.
A Wall Street Journal headline got our attention. The new dream job for young men, stay-at-home son. It's a phrase that's taken off since 27-year-old Brendan Leo won $59,000 on Jeopardy. And he has a master's degree in political science, but he's unemployed. Grow up, get a job, get a wife, build a family.
Just get a wife, bro. Just get a job, bro.
Oh, get a job? Yeah. Just get a job? Why don't I strap on my job helmet and squeeze down into a job cannon and fire off into jobland, where jobs grow on jobbies?
The term welfare queen must have fell out of fashion with Republicans, because it seems even they know the approved safe demographic to go after now. Because it's very obvious what demographic they are talking about when they say young men in their basements playing video games. This just get a job lazy attitude is not surprising, but it's especially funny coming from Fox News of all places. Fox News that spends so much time yapping about immigrants taking American jobs. Fox News will talk for years about how Americans are being screwed out of the workforce. But when this issue manifests itself in Gen Z, suddenly it's a moral failure. The fact is, a lot of American jobs held by men are being lost to automation, offshoring, and yes, cheap foreign labor. Companies and billionaires would rather have cheap labor that they can essentially abuse, not pay fair wages to, just good little worker drones who won't unionize, rather than hire American workers for a living wage. The cheaper the labor they hire, the more money they make. I remember when Bernie Sanders called open borders a Koch brothers conspiracy.
Open borders?
Open
borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal, which says essentially there is no United States.
But it
would
make a lot of the global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state.
Where'd that guy go? A lot of these jobs being taken are jobs traditionally held by men, like construction and factory jobs, manual labor work. But it's not just manual labor jobs, it's also the tech industry and business industry, which are careers also mainly held by men. There are many examples of this, such as Microsoft recently cutting thousands of American workers while requesting 14,000 more H-1B workers this year. Some of those job positions include data scientists, which are 70% men, software developers, which are 80% men, and electronic engineers, which are 90% men, and many more like that. Another example of this was Tesla, where roughly 15,000 American employees were fired in April 2024, and many were replaced with H-1B visa holders. On Twitter, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy tried to chalk this up to these immigrants just simply being the best and the brightest. Yeah, okay. You're paying them less for longer hours and more work, and they're willing to deal with it in order to stay in the country. It's coercive, exploitative, and, dare I say, not very America first. When conservatives confronted Elon Musk for this last year, he told somebody, and I quote, "Take a big step back and yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend." So when it comes to replacing American workers in manual labor with cheap foreign labor, it's deport, deport, deport. But when it comes to replacing his American workers with cheap foreign labor, it's yourself in the face. Interesting. There's also affirmative action and DEI, which are other things Fox News always pisses and shits about. But suddenly, when the conversation is about Gen Z men, the demographic of people who are victims of these things, suddenly these things just like don't exist anymore. Then it's, oh, young men are all just lazy. They just want to be in their parents' basement ordering DoorDash and playing video games. But it's not just the brown people taking your jobs. I am not beating the allegations with this one. The brown people are not taking your jobs, okay? It's not their fault. They're just cheaper. Aim upwards. But it's not just the brown people taking your jobs. It's the women, too. Many of the dying industries are male-dominated, while many of the growing industries are female-dominated, and stigma around these jobs being woman jobs usually stops men from working them. Women are overwhelmingly entering and excelling in college and the workforce, and they're more flexible about job position and pay, while young men usually hold out for higher-paying, higher-position jobs that will make them the breadwinner. Because you see, despite the world progressing and the role of women changing, the role of men has not changed. Every woman is a feminist until the dinner bill comes. But what's crazy is, women might be the ones paying that dinner bill soon. A study from the UK found women aged 22 to 29 earned about 1,000 more annually than men, completely reversing the traditional gender pay gap for this age group. In the US, a 2022 Pew Research Center analysis showed that women under 30 out-earned men in many metropolitan areas, with median earnings at or above 100% of men's, in cities like New York and Washington, D.C. That may not sound like a lot of money now, but it's a growing trend that has never been seen before. It's so bad that it's really starting to affect the dating world. American women have never been this resigned to staying single. They are responding to major demographic shifts, including huge and growing gender gaps in economic and educational attainment, political affiliation, and beliefs about what family should look like. More women than men are attending college, buying houses, and focusing on their friendships and careers over dating and marriage. The challenges of finding a romantic partner have been made more complicated by a growing divide in education and career prospects between men and women. In 2024, 40% of American women ages 25 to 34 had a bachelor's degree, according to Pew, compared to 37% of men. A bachelor's degree increases net lifetime earnings by an estimated $1 million. Women are doing comparatively well when it comes to education in their early years in the labor force, and men are doing comparatively badly. Men's economic struggles seem to be having the biggest effect on women without a college degree, whose marriage rates by 45 have plummeted to 52% for those born between 1930 and 1980, according to research by Cornell University. Young men without a degree are struggling so much as a group that there simply aren't enough with steady jobs and earnings for non-college women to date. Men are poor, women most affected. Modern women are no longer tied to their gender role. Birth control has freed them from the prison that is their biology, and they are making their own money, sometimes more than men. They can have it all, they can do anything, they can be anything. While at the same time, men are still expected to be the provider. And more importantly, many men still want to be the provider, but they can't. And women, though strong and independent, still want men to be the provider.
And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider, that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money.
Basically, men are like, we're worried we're not making enough money. And women are like, we're worried men are not making enough money. Hello class, I am Miss On Head. I am substituting for your teacher today. She was arrested for molesting a 12-year-old boy. So today we are learning about the graph. This is the growth in productivity versus hourly compensation graph. And you can trace almost everything bad happening in society back to this graph. As you can see, productivity increased while compensation barely grew over the same time period. Notice they tracked very closely up until around 1972. Now, what happened around 1972, class? Well, the top marginal tax rate was reduced from 70% in 1964 to 50% by 1981. The federal minimum wage began to stagnate. Income going to the 1% rose from 9% in the 60s to 16% in 2023. CEOs also went from making 20 times more than the average worker to making 350 times more than the average worker. Anything else? Anything else happen around 1972? Yes, Jimmy, that is correct. Women joined the workforce around this time, but we don't have to get into that today. The fact is, hard work no longer guarantees success, and the will to work is tied to the fruits of your labor. And young men are fed up today because 90% of that fruit is rotten. Now, is there some truth to modern young people being lazy? Sure, I guess. Every generation had lazy people. And we do basically live in late-stage mouse utopia, after all. Young people today are faced with two options: revolution or escapism. And a lot of them are choosing escapism. Many have basically given up, but it's not like they didn't try. They tried and they found out the juice just isn't worth the squeeze, whether it's college, dating, or the job market. And in a way, many young men are kind of choosing revolution. The never before seen large shift rightward in young men is a small revolution in a way. They're saying, this isn't working for me, this sucks, I hate this, I want something different. This is also manifesting on the Democrat side in general. The young men that are still voting left are voting further left. You saw this recently in New York City, where Zoran Memdani, a self-proclaimed democratic socialist, won the Democratic primary. Young men are tired of the establishment, left and right. They're tired of the system and they want to burn it down and start again. They want something that works for them because this is not working for them.
If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with 4-year college degrees and like initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism?
Huh. Fox News should hire that guy. There is an entire generation of fighting-aged men who are enraged and feel like they have nothing to live for. You should probably start caring. When they saw this airing on Fox News, they saw an angry woman nagging in their faces about how everything wrong in the world is their fault. An all too familiar thing they have been hearing for far too long. But unfortunately for Democrats, nobody under the age of 60 watches Fox News, so this is not really going to have an effect on young men whatsoever. So keep that $20 million. You might still need it, unless we get dragged into another war in the Middle East. If we do get dragged into another war in the Middle East, young men might come running back to the Democratic Party. Maybe not. Maybe not even a George Bush II electric boogaloo will have men coming back to the Democratic Party. Hopefully we don't find out.
And as I'm editing this right now, a lot of young people, even the podcast bros, seem pretty upset about the Epstein thing, but we know Democrats won't take advantage of the situation in order to protect the Clintons, so maybe not even this will save them, but we'll see, I guess.
Hold on one second. That's better. So that was that video. What do you think of the male loser epidemic? Do you agree with Tommy Lauren? Is it all men's fault? Leave your comments below. I read them all. I am probably reading them right now as you type them. Wait, don't write that. No. You can't say that. No, it doesn't matter if it's with an A. If you like this video, please subscribe, and if you can, donate to me on Patreon or leave a little tip with the little tip jar down below. I'll give it a little heart. It helps the channel, and I appreciate it so much. And I will see you guys again soon with a new video, a new slop video, because I know you gremlins love that shit. Bye!
at an early prototype of Uncharted 4, a version that no longer exists. This build was scrapped after Naughty Dog went one of the most dramatic internal shakeups in its history. In April of 2014, Amy Hennig, who was the original creator of Uncharted and led creative vision of every single Uncharted game up until Uncharted 4, was in the midst of a massive power struggle within Naughty Dog, of which the victor would set the course of what type of developer Naughty Dog would evolve into the modern era. What began as a continuation of Nathan Drake's story ended up reshaping the identity of one of gaming's most beloved studios. Today, I will go over the development process of Uncharted 4 and show how the power struggle ultimately decided not only Naughty Dog's identity, but also wielded immense influence over the direction of the entire gaming industry. Before diving into the development of Uncharted 4, we have to take a look at how Naughty Dog was structured before they began working on Uncharted 4. In 2009, Naughty Dog split into two separate teams. One team was working on Uncharted 3, while the other team, led by Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, started working on a brand new IP, The Last of Us. The dual team model, while enabling high volume output, set the stage for creative conflicts and resource imbalances. Following the successful launch of Uncharted 3, the team responsible for that game, under the creative direction of Amy Hennig and game director Justin Richmond, transitioned into preliminary work on Uncharted 4. Creative control for the Uncharted series remained with Amy Hennig, who was a key architect of the franchise's narrative and gameplay. During the initial conceptual phase, Hennig wanted Uncharted 4 to have a focus on enhanced mobility like the grappling hook, new traversal mechanics like shooting cliffs to create handholds for climbing, and a completely different story, which I'll get into shortly. While Uncharted 3 was a successful release, The Last of Us garnered critical acclaim and consumed significant studio attention. After the release of Uncharted 3, the studio's two teams split was starting to conjoin back together. Resources were being pulled away in droves from the Uncharted team as Naughty Dog began focusing on getting The Last of Us out the door. The internal competition for resources and talent created an environment where The Last of Us development and subsequent release in 2013 inadvertently drew focus and resources away from Uncharted 4's development, impacting the initial development trajectory. With Naughty Dog focusing their studio on The Last of Us, Uncharted 4's development was very limited, as they simply didn't have enough resources to go through a proper pre-production phase. Uncharted 4's real development started to ramp up after The Last of Us shipped, with the Uncharted team finally returning to Hennig in mid to late 2013. From November of 2011 to March of 2014, Amy Hennig and her teams actively developed preliminary concepts and gameplay ideas for Uncharted 4. Again, while these ideas were made, they couldn't really flesh them out due to resources being pulled into The Last of Us. But their original vision for evolving gameplay mechanics included the inclusion of vehicles and a grappling hook. The team also explored a unique combat twist, considering a period where Nathan Drake would primarily rely on melee combat, aiming to showcase a different facet of his character. They tinkered with prototypes of new traversal mechanics such as slide mechanic and the ability for Drake to shoot cliff walls to create handholds for climbing. A cornerstone of Hennig's narrative was the introduction of Nathan Drake's old partner, Sam. Hennig's original concept for Sam was not as Nathan's blood brother, but rather a figure who would be one of the main villains, who was bitter towards Nathan for being left behind during a Panamanian prison escape. Hennig described her Sam as an antagonistic force in Drake's life that he had to reconcile with, complicated by their past rather than a classic antagonist. This version aimed to explore deeper themes of trust, abandonment, and the nature of family through the lens of Nate creating his own identity. Her story would have delved more into Nathan's mother's research and her death, which was largely glossed over in the final game. Henning's vision did not include a character named Nadine Ross or the childhood flashbacks that became central to the final game. As development was officially in full force by summer of 2013, Henning and her team were already falling behind. The game was originally supposed to be released in 2015, but the deadline was quickly approaching and the team was still in the prototype phase of development. The game was failing and it was very far behind. But despite the catastrophic setbacks, Naughty Dog publicly announced that they were working on the next Uncharted game with a teaser trailer which was released in late 2013. They didn't tie an official release date to the game yet, but this is what the game looked like around this date. Seeing this set the higher-ups at Naughty Dog into high alert. Something had to be done and it had to be course corrected fast. But before we dive into what the higher-ups did, I just want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Surfshark. Surfshark is a lightweight, easy-to-use VPN that helps keep your browsing private and free from the dangers of public internet use. Surfshark is built from the ground up to not only protect your internet traffic, but also comes with a built-in ad blocker to stop trackers from harvesting your data. With over 3,000 servers in over 100 countries, it's incredibly easy to protect where you're accessing the internet from by easily switching over to a different country. This also allows you to watch shows and movies from streaming services that may not be available in your country. For gaming, Surfshark has pledged to not having any bandwidth limitations, so gaming while using Surfshark is fast and secure. But the best part of Surfshark is that you only need one account to access Surfshark across all of your devices. It's also available risk-free too, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. There's no risk to giving the service a try and seeing how it fits into your daily routine, whether that's streaming, browsing, or researching game development history videos, like this one. You can go to the link below or use code POUNDER at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. And a quick thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. In March of 2014, a pivotal moment in the development of Uncharted 4 was about to happen. Amy Hennig abruptly exited Naughty Dog with no context to her departure. Her departure was followed by that of game director Justin Richmond and several other long-standing veterans of the studio. Here was the creative director of one of PlayStation's most successful franchises, leaving in the middle of development of what would become Uncharted 4. So, what happened here? Well, the official statement from both Hennig and Sony is that there was creative differences in the project. Hennig is bounded by a non-disclosure agreement, so she can't tell us the exact reasons why she left, nor do I think we'll ever know. But the unofficial story, however, gives us some clues and helps paint a bigger picture. In 2014, IGN reported that Hennig was forced out by Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley based on verified sources. Naughty Dog immediately refuted these claims by saying this: "We feel it's necessary to clear up a very important point that was unprofessionally misreported when the story broke," Evan Walls and Christopher Ballistra, the studio's co-presidents, said in a joint statement on Naughty Dog's site. Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann were not involved in what transpired. After the statement, IGN retracted what they said about the power struggles occurring within Naughty Dog. But if there truly wasn't a mix-up of long-time leadership, then it's awfully suspicious for them not to reveal the true reason to us. Additionally, Jason Schreier, who is extremely reputable about behind the scenes of video games, corroborated the reporting that Hennig was out due to a power struggle. Coupled with the fact that Druckmann and Straley had become rising stars after the critical and commercial success of The Last of Us, the reporting seems more and more accurate. While we don't know the real reason why Amy Hennig, the mother of the Uncharted franchise, abruptly left the project, we do know who took over the project. Can you guess who is in charge of the game's development now? Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley were brought on to the project immediately following Amy's departure. A defining decision made upon their arrival was to scrap 100% of the story and a significant portion of the work that had been completed under Hennig's direction. According to Nolan North, Nathan Drake's voice actor, almost 8 months of work was scrapped and rewritten under the new direction. Druckmann and Straley effectively restarted the game's narrative and much of its gameplay from scratch. The decision to scrap 8 months worth of work and implement a 100% change in the story represented an immense financial and creative cost. For a AAA title, this level of rework is highly unusual and inherently risky. The complete creative overhaul and the unprecedented decision to discard a significant portion of development content directly caused Uncharted 4 to be delayed from its initial informal 2015 target to a confirmed 2016 release window. So, now that the original project was starting over from scratch, what did the new leads actually change from Amy's original vision? And how did they rebuild the game with a completely new narrative and design? The decision to effectively restart development in 2014 meant that Druckmann and Straley had less than 2 years to complete a game that had already been through the conceptual phase and the prototype phase. The game was originally targeting a 2015 release, but was thankfully pushed back to 2016 once the shakeup occurred. Sony officially revealed Uncharted 4 alongside a release year in E3 of 2014, just a month after the internal struggle. The new creative direction from Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley aimed for Uncharted 4 to be the definitive final chapter for Nathan Drake, adopting a darker tone and a more character-centric conclusion for the series. This drastically compressed the timeline. Coupled with the imperative to meet numerous deadlines, forced the studio into a massive rush and overdrive in production, as 70 to 80% of the existing work was scrapped, including levels, writing, and voice acting. Only certain elements remained, like the Madagascar chase scene and some basic character concepts. They restarted the game with a completely new tone. Like I said before, it was darker, more introspective, and character-driven in the style of The Last of Us. This reboot meant they had to build a brand new AAA game in about 18 months, which is unheard of in the AAA space, even at the time. Pressure from Sony to release the game fast played a key factor in the strict timeline here as well. Given these requirements, there's only one solution that the higher-ups saw as the way forward, and unfortunately, it's a solution that's been normalized across the entire gaming industry. The shift in leadership and the complete reboot of the game's narrative had massive ripple effects across the studio, particularly in how work was conducted. With less than 2 years to build a AAA title from scratch, Naughty Dog entered what employees later described as a brutal period of crunch culture. Developers worked long hours, weekends, and holidays just to keep the project on track. Some insiders reported 60 to 80-hour work weeks becoming the norm, with mounting pressure from Sony to deliver on time. While Naughty Dog had consistently produced critically acclaimed games, it has also gained a notoriety for its intense work environment. Uncharted 4 and the development of the game was no exception. The culture of crunch would also waterfall over and continue to snowball into their next project, The Last of Us Part 2, which I have a video about if you're interested in. A quote from a developer who worked on Uncharted 4 really highlights how chaotic the reboot of the game was. A normal work week for us was 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week, and we didn't really have any choice about it. Sometimes we'd stay until midnight or 1 a.m., and at the end of Uncharted 4, we started doing 7-day work weeks for a little while, and even did some 24-hour shifts where we'd come in at 10 a.m. and leave at 10 a.m. the next day. I didn't really have life outside of work for 8 to 9 months during the big crunch. Uncharted 4's reboot suffered from a chaotic production cycle where features were being built and tested simultaneously with level design. The need to finalize systems like the grappling hook, sliding, and open-ended exploration in Madagascar, for example, put enormous strain on designers and QA alike. It's worth noting that these gameplay features were holdovers from Henning's original vision, but had to be reintegrated into an entirely new story framework. While the final product was loved by critics and fans, many team members walked away from the project completely burnt out. In fact, several key developers like designers left the studio after the game's release, citing the unsustainable pace of work. The situation with Uncharted 4 ignited broader discussions within the games industry about the toll of crunch and the lack of protections for game workers, an issue still mostly unresolved across much of AAA development. Despite the internal struggle and controversial development cycle, Uncharted 4 launched in May 2016 to critical acclaim, winning multiple Game of the Year awards and selling over 15 million copies. It is widely regarded as one of the finest entries in the franchise, and perhaps the strongest narrative closure in any PlayStation first-party series. But the cost of achieving that success fundamentally changed Naughty Dog. Following Uncharted 4, Bruce Straley left the studio in 2017, citing burnout and the need to reclaim his creativity outside of the demands of AAA games. Neil Druckmann, meanwhile, became the face of Naughty Dog, elevated to vice president and now serving as studio head of Naughty Dog. He went on to spearhead The Last of Us Part 2, a game that would continue to stir enormous disclosures around storytelling in games and once again sparks of criticisms against crunch. Internally, Naughty Dog has made efforts to address its reputation for crunch, publicly stating that it's working on improving workflows and fostering a healthy development environment. However, reports still continue to surface about long hours and intense production cycles, raising questions about how sustainable their creative model truly is. What's clear is that the events surrounding Uncharted 4's development marked a pivotal transformation for Naughty Dog. The studio went from being a powerhouse of action-adventure games to one of the most narratively ambitious and at times divisive developers in the entire industry. And it all began with a power struggle that tore one of gaming's most iconic franchises apart, only to rebuild it from the ashes in less than 2 years.